on our head. I really do. I basically say, do you have gifts in doing anything else? Well, if you do, I'd suggest you do it. And they're like, huh? First of all, I figure if I can dissuade them, then they don't need to be doing that anyways. So if my bucket of ice water is enough, then I save them from some real problems. But my real concern is that they didn't see the years and years and years and years of preparation that went into that debate. They did not see those years when Alpha and Omega Ministries was a tiny little bit of nothing. They didn't see the times that I would spend hours preparing a seminar. I remember once I did a seminar on the New World Translation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had handouts, and I was ready to go to town. And I went into the little conference room that we rented from the office complex where we had our little teeny office. And it was supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and there I sat. 7:05, 7:10. About 7:15, I put all those handouts back together again and took them back to the office and locked the door and went home because there wasn't anybody there. Wasn't anybody to talk to. And they don't see that. They don't see the number of times that happened, or there was one person or two people, and the wife working so that you can do those things and go to. They don't see all of that. And so I sort of try to introduce them to reality. That, it can be exciting to do. There's no question about that. But there's a lot more that goes into it than meets the eye. And sadly, a lot of apologists I know of are not churchmen. They just travel about doing their things. They're not really associated with the church, and that's a problem. Before you do the apologetics, and that's the very term, prosapologion, that's the only place it's found in the sense of this sense, that we've mentioned it earlier in Romans chapter 1. They're without an apologia in Romans chapter 1. But as far as a commandment to Christians, it's right there, but there's something we must do first. And I'm afraid that it's something that we're very rarely challenged to do to the depth that very clearly this text would require us to do it. It is for all Christians, by the way. This is not limited to the elders of the church. This is obviously everything Peter's saying here is to all Christians. They're all going to suffer the slings and arrows of the world and the resistance of the world. And so this is something we are all commanded to do. And if it's a commandment, we might want to know how to fulfill it. But let's think about what it's saying. First of all, it takes place in the heart. It takes place in the very center point of our being. This is not impersonal. This does not leave aside the intellectual, but it includes the entirety of our being. It is the very heart and soul of the center of our personhood. And so it involves our emotions, it involves our affections, it involves our mind, it involves our intellect. In our hearts, we are to do something. And what are we to do? Well, it's this idea of treating something as holy. Setting something apart, the very root meaning of hagiadzo, the very root meaning of sanctify or treat as holy, is to consider something to be special, to set it apart. It's not profane. It is not just a daily use thing. When we think of Isaiah 6 and God upon his throne and the angels are saying, holy, 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 when we think of that holiness, yes, very often we think of holiness in the sense of righteousness and purity, and all those things are a part of it, but at its root, it means completely other than profane, other than normal, unique. And so to treat something as holy in our hearts is to give it a special place, a central place, not a profane place. And that is why we cannot, if we are serious believers in Jesus Christ, approach Christianity as if it is a part of our life. We have our secular life. We have our sports life. We have our religious life. And unfortunately, that's what I think a large portion of what calls itself evangelicalism in our world today is all about. As I said, if 60% of the people in this land are actually truly believers, it would have a huge impact upon what happens in this land. But the reason you can fill former Houston Rockets basketball arenas with people who come to hear fluff is because in their thinking, Christianity is one portion. It's one little section that you can fit into a Sunday morning, and maybe if you're feeling particularly religious, a Sunday night, but that doesn't really necessarily have a huge impact upon Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, upon the rest of your life. That is not an option for the person who is desirous of obeying the command that is found here in 1 Peter 3:15. This idea of treating as holy Christ as Lord in your hearts means that you are setting this truth and this one apart in such a way that this holiness is reflective of the attitude you have toward this one. And who is this one? The Messiah as Yahweh. So in other words, this becomes an ordering principle. If you set him apart, if you recognize that the Messiah truly was the incarnate one, that the second person of the Trinity has entered into his own creation, that he has provided perfect redemption upon the cross of Calvary, that you have in the New Testament documents, the Father identified as Yahweh, the Son is identified as Yahweh, the Spirit is the Spirit of Yahweh. Yahweh therefore becomes a word that refers to the very being of God. There's not a confusion of the persons. We're not saying that Jesus is the Father or anything like that at all, but that this refers to the being of God and that Jesus Christ truly was God in human flesh. If you believe that, and if you make that each and every day an ordering principle of your life, that you are his servant, that he's truly entered into this world, he's coming again, he has given you his word, that is going to reorder all of your principles in your life, all your priorities. It's going to become that which gives order to every aspect of your life. Very often young people will say, well, I want to find God's will for your life. Well, start here. Set apart Christ as Lord, as Yahweh in your hearts each and every day. Begin with that, and that will order everything else. That will order everything else. So that's what we are commanded to do. It is not an option. And it is the very thing, my friends, that once again, the world around us wants to convince us to never do. Because if you